The grandfather noticed he was holding the gun in his hand, so he asked him what he intended to do with it.
This, Dad, Mom, Kakeru, I'll murder those bastards. I will murder them all.
His grandpa wanted to advise him to tell the police, but Shun interrupted him and told him he wouldn't tell them, and that no one would stop him from seeking revenge. Therefore, a group of kids were torturing another child in various cruel ways, finding enjoyment in it. The boy being tortured was named Urama Shun, 12 years old. They took turns hitting and experimenting on him. After their peer confirmed they were done, he approached, grabbed his hand and formed an X sign with his arms, then pushed it against his neck. Shun's eyes were filled with tears, and he told them it hurt, but none of them cared. They were enjoying torturing him. One of them was named Kuga Daichi. The other was Ushiro Yuga, Madoka Hiro, and Senkoji. They are all the same age. However, their leader and the most dangerous of them all was a boy named Shigoku Kyo, whose evil was not apparent on his face. Daishi was impressed by his move and thought he might have learned it from judo. So Shigoku told him he was right, and that it was a technique to end someone's life. His friends were impressed by him, and saw him as better than the adults in judo. He continued explaining the move.
If you tighten here, he will die.
Shun couldn't speak. He was choking and saying to himself,
I am really dying. Soon after I became a 5th grader, I started being bullied by these 5. I didn't understand why they did it. It just suddenly happened.
Kyo noticed while on top of Shun that he had soiled his pants. He recoiled and realized that he had almost killed him by himself. Shun coughed disbelievingly.
Did he really intend to kill me?
They left him after they were done torturing him and bid him farewell.
Well, later then.
Test Subject A.
Labrat A is the nickname those guys call me.
They're likening bullying as an experiment.
Truly, I can't understand them.
As Shun was returning home, he passed by a small river. Without hesitation, he threw himself into it, but quickly surfaced. He couldn't bring himself to do it. He desperately wanted to end all the suffering, but he couldn't. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a small cat, somehow exciting. Kakeru began to think of a name for the cat. Then suddenly, he turned to Shun.
Hey, big brother?
Shun didn't understand what he wanted. Then Kakeru continued to ask him in surprise about the mark on his neck. Shun was surprised to hear that coming from him, and answered that he had been wrestling at school.
I was caught in a strangle attack, but I won in the end, you know?
Kakeru listened with admiration to his brother's story, which he fabricated. The only thing that calmed Shun's heart was that his brother didn't care how hard it was, but decided to continue the lie so he wouldn't know everything to protect his little brother's smile. However, he didn't know someone was watching them. Koji and Daichi. Later, when Shun returned home, he found a note from his parents. To Shun, going out to buy something, left a crab stick. He went out running happily while holding food for the cat, wondering to himself if she would eat it. When he reached the river, he was amazed by what he saw. The cat was nowhere to be found. And as he stood there, he felt the group of bullies behind him. Here, Shigoku Kyo spoke up.
Hey, Test Subject A, come with us.
They took him to the thick and scary forest and told him they left her on that mountain. Kyo approached Shun and started to terrify him more and more, telling him there were wild boars and foxes.
If you don't find her quickly, I wonder if it'll get eaten.
Shun rushed towards the forest as soon as he heard his words. He was crying, his heart broken.
Why did they?
The bullies remained standing, watching him. Then, Hiro asked Kyo-chan about the reason for starting to bully Urama. Kyo was surprised and asked if he didn't like that. Hiro replied with a negative, and told him that he didn't mean it like that. Then he told them that they followed him because they found it fun for them too, but he was wondering why they chose him. Kyo looked at him and asked him,
What do you think is the most amazing thing they can do?
Everyone started to answer according to their preferences and what they liked. But Kyo didn't mean that. He told them that the answer is ending someone's life. His friends were surprised by his answer. He continued to explain to them that it's not simply murder.
To murder for someone's sake. To murder for yourself. Murder for love. There's always a reason. A person who murders for no reason. I will be the first. A person who grew up in a loving and welcoming family, blessed with friends. No reason and desire to murder like that. Finish someone's life, either directly or indirectly, and that's decided first.
He saw someone as weak as Shun, so the optimal way for him was to indirectly murder him. Would it be risky or not? This is that kind of experiment. For test subject A. How far must he be driven until he finishes his life? As Shun cried in the forest, unable to believe the level of cruelty they possessed, they were amazed by their friend Kyo and admired his way of thinking. Shun buried that kitten in the forest, which he found drowned in blood, and continued his way through the forest, sobbing and pondering how heartless they were. He was extremely sad because he couldn't even name it. He couldn't forget the image of the cat he was preoccupied with. How could they do such a thing? He was desperate to return home and see his family to recharge his sense of comfort. Suddenly, while lost in his thoughts, a bird startled him. He raised his head to the sky, but couldn't identify the location. And suddenly, he heard a sound among the trees. Then, someone came out directly in front of him. Shun panicked and fell to the ground. It was an old man with a scary look, carrying a gun in his hand. Suddenly, the old man exclaimed, "Shun?" Shun calmed down and focused on the person to discover it was his grandpa. Shun remained seated on the ground without a word, staring at his gun. When the grandpa noticed, he told him it was a hunting gun and that he was looking for wild boars. He came down on his knees and asked him, "Are you lost?" Shun's fear didn't go away. He replied with a yes. The grandpa understood that and told him it was dangerous to wander around. Then he said he would take him home. As dusk was falling, Shun's mother was outside, worriedly awaiting his return, then noticed him coming from afar and called out to him in surprise. Here, his grandpa gently nudged him and asked him to behave better. He was from his father's side of the family. He was living alone, and his family lived nearby to monitor his health, or so it seemed to him. His mother approached him and started scolding him, raising her voice and asking him why he was wandering with him. She angrily told him she always told him not to go near him. He and his brother were not allowed to see their gramps for a reason they didn't know. Shun headed towards his room, sat on the floor with his head down. He thought about everything that happened to him that day. Suddenly, Kakeru opened the door and asked him what was wrong. But Shun didn't want him to see him in that state. He turned away and told him that it was nothing. He didn't want to look at his brother's face while tearing up like this. Here, his brother approached him and hugged him, something Shun didn't expect. Then his brother told him, tears filling his eyes, that he always tries so hard. Shun's eyes widened upon hearing his brother's words, while Kakeru told him that he always tries so hard for his sake. He knew his older brother wasn't okay, so he tried to calm him down. Those words were enough to make Shun cry and express his true feelings in front of his younger brother for the first time. That day, I finally told my family about being bullied and was comforted by them. I didn't speak of their names since I didn't want to receive a half-hearted apology then. My parents moved quickly and I was transferred to another school. And now, it's been 1 month since I stopped going to that school. A few days later, the mother and brother, Kakeru, stepped out and informed Shun that they were going to pick up Dad. She asked him to take care of himself. On his way to the grocery store, he listened to his mother's words, and Kakeru bid farewell to his big bro with a big smile on his face. He stood there waving goodbye to them as they got into the car. Shun headed to the grocery store, bought what he needed, and returned with a bag full of items. Suddenly, he heard from behind.
Hey, I haven't seen you at school lately.
It was the group of bullies who were used to harassing him. They told him they knew that his mother usually picks up his father at this hour. Then, Daichi handed him the phone and told him it was a call from Kyo-chan. Shun took the phone, trembling, unaware of what awaited him. He put the phone to his ear.
Running away in the middle of the experiment is unforgivable, you know?
Kyo reminded him of the mountain their parents always passed by. He told him that an accident there wouldn't be strange. Shun was shocked to hear that. What? On the other hand, Kyo-chan and Hiro were on the mountain, overlooking the road, planning to finish the experiment after this, although the order for what he wanted to do had changed. After a while, Hiro started screaming, happiness evident on his face.
Look, his parents' car is coming. What are you going to do?
Yes. Suddenly, Kyo pushed Hiro from behind. Hiro wasn't expecting that. He fell from the top to the bottom and hit the ground. As he lifted his face, he found the car almost running him over. The mother noticed this quickly and turned the wheel into another direction, veering off the road. Hiro looked on in astonishment, blood streaming down from his eyes. The car plummeted downward and crashed into the trees. Kyo-chan descended, joy filling him.
Look, it worked, Hiro.
He went towards the car. Meanwhile, Hiro, bleeding, and happiness also engulfed him from the success of their plan. When Kakeru woke up, he was surprised to see his parents bleeding. Suddenly, he heard a noise, and when he turned around, he found Kyo looking at him with a big rock in his hand. He struck Kakeru on the head with it. Kakeru started bleeding and struggled to breathe. Here, Kyo gave him another blow to the head. Hiro watched him from a distance as the car appeared, as if it were going to catch fire. He lit a match and threw it on the car to intensify the fire. Kyo then said to Hiro,
Looks like it's begun.
His friend didn't understand what he meant by that. The flames grew more intense, and Kyo watched, licking his lips in enjoyment. After the incident, the doctor came to Shun and told him that they had managed to save his brother, but he had suffered serious burns and injuries. It's possible he may not wake up for the rest of his life. Shun watched his brother sleeping on the hospital bed through the glass, unable to believe what had happened. His parents' voices echoed in his mind, and the moments he spent with his family flashed in his head. It was a terrible and painful feeling. He felt like life was over, and began to wonder if he should die too. Then a man called out to him, telling him that he was his uncle, and asked if he had anywhere to go now on. Shuden hadn't thought about it at all, so he was surprised by the question. Then the man suggested he go with them if he had nowhere else to go. Shun kept thinking, then told them he had a place to go. I do. The voice of his grandpa comes to his mind. He decided to go to his grandfather. Then he told them again that he had a place to stay. Shun packed his belongings from his home and headed to his grandfather's house, thanking him for allowing him to stay. The grandfather stood there, looking at him, then approached him and began to pat his head. I get lonely staying here anyway, so it's good to have you here, he said. Shun noticed 3 keys hanging nearby. That night, the weather was rainy and stormy. Shun remembered what his grandpa said. I'll send you home, but before that, let me put this away in the warehouse. Remembering what had happened before, and knowing the location of the warehouse, Shun headed there. He was completely soaked from the rain. He used the key he took and opened the door, entering the warehouse and using the flashlight to help him see. He easily found what he wanted and headed towards it. It was the grandfather's gun he had seen him use. Suddenly, it stood, illuminating the warehouse to reveal a large picture hanging on the wall. Shun was surprised.
Kita Yonkor.
He noticed a sword on the table below the picture. Shun didn't understand what those things were doing there. Shun, what are you doing? The grandpa suddenly entered. He turned to him and was surprised to see him. The grandfather noticed he was holding the gun in his hand, so he asked him what he intended to do with it. Shun refused and turned in the opposite direction. The grandfather calmly asked him to give it to him, but Shun was adamant. No, I won't. This... Mom, cock you. I'll murder those bastards. I will murder them all. Shun spoke with a tone filled with anger and resentment. His grandfather was shocked to learn the truth. Murder. Is this the truth? Shun informed him that those thugs had told him about their plans. His grandpa wanted to advise him to tell the police, but Shun interrupted him and told him he wouldn't tell them, and that no one would stop him from seeking revenge. The grandfather stood there, then told him that if he were him, he would eliminate them with a knife or something else. Then he asked him, "Are you so hopeless that you'd have to use that?" Shun turned to him and told him that he wasn't. The grandpa understands his grandson's feelings. Then he approached him and took the gun from him, telling him that he would be apprehended by the police before he could exact revenge. He then told him that if he sought revenge now, the feeling of guilt would haunt him for the rest of his life, even if it were for his family. Then the grandpa's tone changed when he said, "Where's the thrill in that?" These words were heavy to Shun. Here, the grandpa approached the hanging picture, speaking to him. Kure Sanchofu's 100th Special Squadron, also known as the Kitayama Corps. He told him it was a second Japanese service unit established in the Second War. During his time there, the ways of eliminating humans had been deeply ingrained in him. Then he turned to him after making his decision. "Then I shall train you," to ensure he could give them the suffering they deserved and execute his revenge. Gramps' words were no mere lies. He was convinced that was the case because their eyes are the exact same as his. 4 years later, after Shun made his decision, he plotted his course and set his goal in this muddied world. The person who drifted around not knowing what he was no longer exists. And the world has always been divided into two parts. Good people, those who sow smiles for you, and villains who snatch them away. Here began Shun's life of revenge, after learning from his grandpa what he wanted, and becoming determined. Niseki High. It's a naturally colorful school commute, and unchanging despite the passage of time. The elegant school building. Participation in club activities is non-mandatory, because the school tradition places importance on taking pride in respecting the students' autonomy. Azuma Chizuru, a high school student who loves this school suddenly, as she dreams of being the hero of that morning. But her friend interrupts her with a greeting and surprises her with a blow to her head using her bag. The girl, named Monet, responded to the greeting and then thanked her for ruining her good mood. Monet was surprised by that and asked if she had gotten a boyfriend or something like that. Chizuru was surprised, and she told her that that wasn't true. Her friend started joking with her and told her that she really knows it's too early for her. While they were talking, their friends joined them, wondering what was happening because she seemed energetic. Monet replied that Chizuru says she wants a boyfriend. The two girls were excited to hear that and began cautioning her, asking her to be careful because there had been a suspect lately who was 2 meters tall. Chizuru imagined that and got scared, but she quickly realized that she hadn't said that in the first place and told them so. Here, her friend started thinking and asked her if that means she doesn't need a boyfriend. Chizuru blushed and hesitantly replied that she didn't mean that. The two girls got more excited and started screaming with joy, telling her they would talk about it again during break time. Chizuru tried to stop them, but she couldn't. In the middle of class, while the teacher was writing on the board, Chizuru was thinking about her friend's words about a boyfriend, putting her hand on her cheek. She didn't have the time to think about it in middle school because she was always absorbed in club activities. She felt annoyed with herself because she realized that she had never confessed to anyone before, and she wasn't confident she could have a proper romance. Here, the teacher called out to Urama, surprising him as he wasn't paying attention. He responded, eh. The teacher told him it wasn't and asked him how many times he did that. Then he asked him to solve a question, but he quickly changed his mind because he knew that he wouldn't know the answer. However, Shun came to the board, surprising the teacher. What? You can solve it? Shun remained silent for a moment, thinking about what he should write. Then he turned to him and told him that he didn't understand. The teacher asked him why he even came here then. Here, everyone in their class laughed at that, and in the midst of it, the teacher yelled, "Return to your seat." Shun apologized and returned to his place, while Shizuru laughed softly, looking at him as he returned to his place. After that, it was break time, and her friends brought up the subject again, asking her if there was anyone she liked. She replied that there wasn't, and here her friend told her to choose one if she was being forced to choose. Shizuru was a little embarrassed, and then turned to Uruma, who was alone and getting ready to leave. She told them that maybe it was Uruma-kun. The girls were surprised by Shizuru's tastes, and here, Shizuru asked them to hold on and that she found him a bit interesting, but it's not love or anything like that. The girls screamed together and began to rejoice. However, Shizuru's tone changed, and she told them she was serious. Her friends knew that when they saw that her eyes weren't smiling. Then Monet asked her if she really found Uruma interesting. She told her that he is handsome, but slender and seems weak. Suddenly, they had a clatter, and Shizuru went to take a look and found that someone had bumped into Uruma. The guy apologized to him and asked him if he was hit. Uruma began to gather his things on the ground and told him that it was okay. The guy told him that he didn't see him, and suddenly kicked him again in his hand, causing the notebooks he had collected to fall. Shizuru couldn't hold herself back and shouted at him. He turned to her and looked at her with his menacing eyes. She froze in place and couldn't say a word. The guy went with his friend, leaving Uruma on the ground gathering his belongings, while he glared at them from behind. They were Kuga Daichi and Senkoji Katsumi from the bullying group who were responsible for his family's death. Monet was annoyed by Kuga's behavior and told them he was the worst. They were able to know his truth from that behavior. Monet told them that he had a scholarship for karate. Well, none of them understood why Senkoji was so aligned with him. It was possible that they were in the same middle school. Uruma carried his books and left the classroom, while Shizuru followed him with her eyes, feeling sorry for him. He headed to the staff room. "I've come to collect the pack." He began carrying and transporting them. Here, Uruma and Shizuru's voice called after him and approached him. Introducing herself, she told him she was from the same class and started helping him carry the packs. She blushed a little after finishing her sentence, then said, "It's fine, Azuma-san. It's better if you don't get involved with me, because Kuga might target you." Shizuru froze in place and couldn't find anything to say. Then she told him that he wouldn't find out about that. They took those packs over to the music room for preparation. They were very tired, and Shizuru couldn't believe that the teacher made them carry something this heavy alone. Here, Uruma looked at her and thanked her. Shizuru blushed and asked him to stop thanking her, because at the time, she couldn't do anything, and considered it as atonement for her own sake. Because Kuga was big and scary, Uruma laughed at her spontaneity and told her she was true. Here, she asked him if Kuga was in the same middle school as him, and he answered, "Nope, our middle schools were different. We went to the same elementary school." Shizuru understood, and here, Uruma laughed again and told her that she was very kind. Then he reassured her and told her he would be fine, and that he didn't think about Kuga's actions. Shizuru was surprised by that, and how he did all of that and didn't care. Shizuru wanted to help in any way, so she suggested to him that she could inform the teachers herself. But Uruma turned around and looked at her with serious and intimidating looks. Shizuru froze in place and feared those looks. Here, he said to her again, "It's really fine." Shizuru understood his decision, but she wanted to tell him that she could help. However, Uruma interrupted her. "Azuma-san, please don't. It's more of a nuisance than Kuga." Shizuru stood alone in the room, trying to grasp at what she had heard, as if her ears couldn't believe what they had heard. She couldn't get him. She was upset on his behalf because he didn't want to tell the teachers about anything either, and she accidentally ruined the sandwich she was carrying. Her friend told her that the sandwich she was carrying was in pain, but she couldn't forget what he had said to her. She was so affected that tears started streaming down her face. Monet knew very well that her friend had been too much unnecessary kindness and righteousness since way back, so she advised her to stop because things would get worse. Here, Shizuru told her that she was talking about the strangeness of Koga. The girls were having their meals while discussing the topic, unable to understand Uruma's behavior in that way. But Shizuru was sure that he was afraid of Kuga finding out if he had spoken to the teachers. Her friends agreed on her opinion. She then told Monet that she was right, and that he was handsome but slender and seemed weak. School time ended, and it was time to go home. Shizuru was heading to catch the bus, but unfortunately, the bus had left. There were still 30 minutes left until the next bus arrived, so she decided to walk to the station, instead of sitting and waiting. She was walking alone, and suddenly she noticed something. Uruma was walking on the same road. She remembered his looks and words that she couldn't forget, and her expression suddenly changed. She decided to continue walking behind him because it would be strange if she overtook him. She lowered her head and continued walking quietly behind him. When she looked forward, she was surprised to see that he had disappeared. She started looking around, wondering where he had gone, and suddenly, she was startled by a strange, huge man near her, who dragged her into the woods and closed her mouth so no one could hear her. Suddenly, someone kicked the man in the face and threw him aside. The man fell to the ground with great force, then sat on the ground, holding the spot where he was hit. Who are you? Shizuru, tears streaming from her eyes, looked on in astonishment, because the person who saved her was her classmate, Uruma. The man felt angry. Bastard, getting in my way! He drew his dagger and attacked him, wanting to finish him off. Uruma didn't move away from him and stood his ground. With a swift movement, he stopped his attack and immobilized him, stepping on his face. He threw his weapon on the ground while Shizuru watched, trembling with fear. She was extremely frightened and tried to hold back her tears, but they eventually burst out. She began to cry aloud, thinking about how scared she had been. Uruma noticed her and went to ask her, "Are you all right, Azuma-san?" Shizuru calmed down a bit after realizing he was with her. Then, Uruma knelt down. "Azuma-san, I'm sorry, but I have a favor to ask of you." He told her to leave the matter of the man to him, and that he would take him to the police. Then he added, "What you saw here, please don't tell anyone." Shizuru was surprised by his request, which she couldn't understand the meaning of. But she thought that all she had to do was obey because he had done her a favor. Suddenly, she felt something on her shoulders. Uruma gave her his clothes because hers had been torn. Then he smiled at her. "See you, Azuma-san. See you tomorrow." She put on his jacket and boarded the train, lost in her thoughts. She pondered over who Uruma really was, and began to remember that her friend Monet's words about him, realizing she was wrong. She recalled the fight between Uruma and the man, something she had only seen in movies, and she couldn't forget the man's looks towards her. Out of fear, she began to thank God that someone had come and saved her. Suddenly, she remembered that she hadn't thanked Uruma for what he had done. On the other hand, Uruma had stabbed the man in the abdomen, making sure he was dead. Then he withdrew his hands from the body and raised them to the sky.